All right, so it is Monday, January 25th, 2021, 4:17 p.m. And this one, wanted to talk to you briefly and just introduce a series we're going to be doing in our Mysteries and Legends of the Bible series. This one is called Nimrod, the Mighty Hunter of Souls. All right, and later on, we're going to get into his wife, the mermaid, Semiramis, right? And so we'll be talking about that as well. But for right now, we are talking about Nimrod. And just a brief introduction. This is a character whose name, growing up like in Sunday school and stuff, we heard about Nimrod and the Tower of Babel and things like that. He was the founder of like the first empire, and his name means we will rebel or something to do with rebellion. But from what I've also read recently, his name refers actually to a leopard. And so Nimrod was a mighty hunter, but it doesn't really state what he hunts. Now, there are other ancient texts that I'll be referencing for this. I wrote a few of them down. The Legends of the Jews by Louis Ginsburg, the Babylonian Talmud, also the Book of Jasher, Josephus, and we'll be getting into some of the other books as well. I don't know if he's in the Book of Enoch or not. I can certainly check that. And of course, the Bible, the Holy Bible. Now, again, a word regarding things like this. When it comes to scripture, I'm definitely a sola scriptura person, which means scripture alone, right? Like scripture interprets scripture. However, just like in other histories, and for instance, reading myths and legends, like the Greek myths, for instance, you get sort of an idea into the Greek mind at that time, and these gods and these demigods and these heroes that they wrote about, right? Whether male or female, or even human or not, or hybrid. And so, they would write about these things, but they're still very interesting. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily gospel. And so some of these extra biblical sources that I kind of dive into, I don't think that they are what you would call inspired by God. I don't think that they are, or am I claiming to say that they are inerrant, like I would for the Holy Scriptures? It's nothing like that. It's more like these were other writings, some at the time, some later, but these were other people's histories and views of what went on. Now, are they legend? That is to say, are they true and embellished? Possibly. Are they myths? I believe they're based on real people, so I don't think they're myths in the sense that they're just made out of thin air to teach somebody a lesson, like a parable or something like that, or a fable. I think it at the very worst, I guess, or at the very, if nothing else, erring on the side of caution, they would be considered legends based on real people and or real events, but embellished, right? Made like larger than life. However, I believe that the people depicted are real. And there is that statement, I can't remember who said it, but a legend may not be a fact, but that the legend exists is a fact, and that requires an explanation. There's a reason for it. So we'll be going into these books. Now, there is an old legend too, and I believe it was in the Babylonian, I believe it was in the Talmud. And it talks about, or maybe it was just in one of the old Jewish legend books, but it talks about Nimrod had actually trained a leopard to hunt with him. And also, there are tales of Nimrod not being a hunter of wild animals, or at least wild animals alone, but perhaps great game, like large animals, and also that he was a hunter of souls, that he would go around and he would gather people to create and construct his great cities and his empire. There's evidence that he was the ruler of, I want to say, the Akkadian Empire, and he had stretched it out and enlarged that. So there are different things. I just noticed that it looks like there's an Elsa and Anna picture. Sorry, Mrs. Chambers, Maria, she was over here and kind of taking some stuff down from the back, and I think she put that up here, right here. In the meanwhile, I just noticed it. So anyway, and sorry about the mess over here too. We're getting some stuff reorganized, but I wanted to at least do an intro on that. So we will be talking about Nimrod and the fact, was he someone that would actually go around and hunt and enslave people? We're going to check into it. We really are. And present all the evidence, present all the different theories and legends and tales, and try to sort of come to some consensus on what that is. Also, we'll be going into these different characters, right? Like you have Nimrod and Semiramis, Semiramis, his wife, who is also in legend the wife of his father. So I don't know if it was his mother or stepmother. We'll get into that as well. And that they had a child together. Tammuz, I believe the name was. But these names, it's interesting, throughout history, you can tie things sort of together. Like how they have the idea that Jesus in Egypt at the Coptic church, the early church, that they would create images of Jesus, but they were actually Serapis, right? A different god, or like based on Zeus, who was, there's good evidence that Zeus is actually based on Lucifer, right? On Satan. And so there are all of these, and same with Odin in Norse mythology. So there are these different types of ideas, along with the idea of diffusionism, right? Where the cultures spread out, and because they spread out, they influence other areas, other regions, or other cultures, or take those core beliefs and they go somewhere else, and they might change, but they're not necessarily novel beliefs in that they're brand new. They're a variation on an existing theme. So we'll be talking about that as well. Sorry, I'm still really plugged up and a little bit hard to breathe. It's real windy and cold out. But I wanted to start a conversation on that. And so what I would like to do is get a chart and put it in these videos where you'll see like the name of, for instance, like Nimrod and other figures later on in history or in other cultures, maybe sort of across of different names, but who were also based on him. For instance, like, was Gilgamesh based on him? Were Nimrod and Sargon the same person? And was this around roughly probably 22 to 2300 BC? And also the legends that Nimrod was killed by Esau, who lived centuries later, right? How would Nimrod live that long? Now we know that the pre-flood world, right, the antediluvian world, they were reputed to live over 900 years, some of these characters. But it was afterwards that you saw that their lifespan started dropping off. Like I believe Shem or Japheth, they're roughly about 600 years old or so. By the time you get to Abraham, he was like 175, right? Then it drops off. I think like Joseph was like 112 or 120, or maybe that was Jacob. But you see them drop off to roughly about a century. But Nimrod was supposedly around a lot longer. And also he was supposedly a giant, which would have made sense. I mean, he's training a leopard, right? Leopards are not small cats. So for him to use a leopard sort of like as a hunting dog, for lack of a better term, it would be interesting, because here you have an animal that's, a few hundred pounds, 300-400 pounds. I'm not sure about how big leopards really get. And who's to say how big they were after the flood? Because again, Nimrod would have been the son of Cush, who was the son of Ham, right? Who was the son of Noah. Canaan's in there somewhere. I don't know if Canaan was his, but I thought it was, from what I remember, it's Noah, then Ham, then Cush, and then Nimrod. So Noah was either his great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather. So he was pretty close to the flood, within a few hundred years. So who knows? Animals may have still been bigger back then. I'm not quite sure. But in any case, that's an interesting idea to me, that he had a leopard and he was a hunter of souls. He would actually go around and basically, force people into servitude to build his cities. And we see that recurring theme later on in Egypt, right? With the children of Israel in Egypt. So anyway, it's an interesting thing to get into. And also Semiramis, right? Who was supposedly born, a virgin born of the sea, like a chaste mermaid. So, and we'll get into all those characters as well, and who they would represent, whether it's Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, how those came to be known in the Middle East, for instance. And when the Tower of Babel happened, when all of the tongues, when God changed their tongues because they said that they were going to reach the heavens, right? And basically Nimrod was going to confront God. And there are only a few scriptures mentioned about him that mention him in the Bible. So we'll go from there. We'll kind of build upon that and see what we can find. And I will definitely let you know where scripture ends and legends begin. We'll differentiate in between those two. And so, and this is kind of exciting. This is a fun thing. So again, we're going to be getting into different ideas. We're going to get into mysteries and legends of the Bible in various aspects. And if you have any specific characters you'd like me to sort of expound upon, I do look again in other sources. We look through I'll look through whether it's the archaeological record, the historical records, the legends, the myths, sorry, I'm slurring, the customs, the different cultures. But yeah, this guy was really interesting. And is he mentioned again in Revelation? Is he mentioned in Revelation? Is he referred to by Jesus? Because Jesus himself said, right? He said, as in the days of Noah. And Noah was still around during part of this. So again, we'll talk about it. We'll have a conversation. You guys take care. God bless you. And we will talk with you again soon. All right. Looking forward to it. Bye-bye.